Good evening, everyone. Good evening, good evening, good evening. This is Tanita Abraham here once again on this Wealthy Wednesday. Um, just to go over a few more of my tips to financial freedom. I want to go over a few things first as people begin to come in and join the stream here. First, of course, as always, I want to give some shout outs and let everyone know I appreciate you for being here. Hey, Terry, thanks for coming. Good to see you once again. So, a couple of things. If this is your first time, one thing very important I want you to do is hashtag newbie in the comment section. That way I know that you're here and I know to follow up with you in case you have any questions. Second, shoot me a comment in the comment section like Terry did. Also, just want to make sure I'm keeping track of everyone and recognizing everyone that's been faithfully following me, and also acknowledge who is new to the Building Legacies page and stream. Third thing, also, if you see at the bottom right there, right there we go. Definitely get a chance when you get a chance. Go to my website www.buildourlegacy.com. It is still a work in progress, but it is finally almost done. So, as I had promised when I first left my job a few weeks back, classes are being put together, they are being planned and scheduled and reviewed by the professionals before we go live. But we are almost there. So, if you are interested in anything regarding investing, planning, financial planning, saving, anything like that, make it a point to go to the website. We have a mailing list, we have a blog list that's also on there. It's going to be coming out. And if you have any questions, you can definitely reach out to me there, or you can reach out to me from the Building Legacies Facebook page that a lot of you are on right now. There's also a link to set up an appointment. We have some consultations there. So don't hesitate to do whatever it takes to get whatever help you can get out of me while you can. And again, I appreciate your support. So, also, if this is one of your first times here, just want to recap. Some of you have been here for a couple of weeks, some of you are still fairly new. So, I wanted to make sure one, let's make sure that I'm streaming here properly. It looks like I am. And then two, if you haven't seen any of my other videos, take the time to go back and watch some of the things that I've spoken about in the past. This is only week 4, so there's a lot more information to come. The majority of my topics come from a question that is posed to me or has been posed to me mostly on Facebook. So, very common questions, very straight to the point. I don't like to go longer than 30 minutes to dive right in and get right to the point. Any more detail, you can follow up with me afterwards. So, if you haven't seen them, there's 3 other videos you have already missed. First one is 5 common mistakes investors make. That was a good one for just about anybody. I think a lot of information was given there that most people didn't know. So definitely go back and check that out because it will be beneficial for everyone. Just like others, how to invest with limited funds. And then last week was 5 things your financial advisor doesn't want you to know. Hey, Rochelle, thanks for joining. No, it wasn't late, just a little bit internet problems. You know how it goes, internet problems. All right. So, again, thank everyone for joining us. I see people are still coming in. Also, next week, we'll be going over probably step 2 to this video. A lot of people are asking questions about investing when it comes to their kids. So tonight's topic is about just a few things you should consider when you're starting investment accounts for your children. Not necessarily just investing in your name to pass on to your kids, but investment accounts set up solely for your children. And I'll explain that more a little bit further. So, just a few tips, some things you should know before you open an investment account for your kid of any age. All right. Just checking the comment section here. Again, making sure not missing anyone. All right, let's go. Give shout outs to everyone, looks like, that posted in the comments so far. So the first thing, of course, is no matter what their age, no matter what their age, I don't care, Jonathan, I would as a baby, I would say stuff like stock. He didn't know what it meant, but just familiarizing and repetitive makes a difference. So even as young as you can possibly can to get them interested in saving money or just money, period. They're Remember your babies, your children, your nieces, your nephews, anyone that's younger than you, they follow you, they mimic what you do. So the earlier you can get them used to seeing you in certain arenas, whether it's balancing a checkbook, which I know they probably won't be doing much longer, but watching financial news, um, looking at your investment account, anything like that, to have them sit there with you and see and look at and just kind of have exposure to is the best way to get started. And of course, at certain ages, they're not going to have a clue what it is, but they're going to remember moments once it triggers something in their future, and their memories in their future. They're going to remember certain moments, certain visions, certain things that they did and they saw mom and or dad or both auntie, whoever do, especially when it came to sitting in front of a computer doing what we call adulting. So that's my first one. It's never too early to get them started learning a little bit about the importance of money, about being careful with money, teaching them about saving, the importance of why it's going to help you in the future education costs. If they want to be a judge, if they, kids at 3 want to be a fireman, want to, whatever they want, a football player, it's always an easy way to slide that in there. So I definitely want to say that's number one. Number two, as they get older, definitely make them a part of the process. Kind of goes back a little bit about what I spoke just a minute ago, but make them a part of a process. Start pointing out things as you notice their behaviors, and using it as a way to get them to get interested more in what their activities are providing for entertainment. So, for example, if your kid likes a certain pair of shoes, or likes a specific video game system, or likes to go to a certain store to buy candy, any of those situations could be just a small little, small little gem to drop, just a seed to plant in their mind about, hey, do one day you're going to be a part owner of this company. They're not going to know what that means specifically, but one day, all of the time you're spending in Walmart, all the time you're spending in, on this video game, all the time you're spending here, I want you to be an owner of a company like this. Start getting them in the mindset of owning and doing for themselves. That will be very beneficial from both sides, whether they're an entrepreneur in the future or a investor in the future. They're going to be one or the other, period. So you might as well, again, start planting those seeds now. Typically in my arena, we say that the standard age, the average age to start talking to children regarding investments and that they will actually understand it a little bit and comprehend is about 7 or 8. So if your child, nephew, niece, grandchild, little cousin, godchild, whatever the case may be, is around the age of 8, there's nothing wrong with having conversations about saving and investing in the stock market, whether or saving for retirement, saving for their education. The better you do that now, the more important it's going to be and more the benefit is going to be to them and you, especially when it comes to if they're looking to go towards pay for college. One of the things that I mentioned, which is going to be another video in the future, is about different ways to get your kid involved in the college, saving for college, planning for college process. The only way they're going to understand it is if you make them a part of the process. A good part of that is really getting them to understand that it is a combined effort when it comes to raising the money. Thanks, Anne. All right. Number 3, it's probably the biggest one here. understanding your account types. So there's several ways to open an account for, especially a minor. That's what we're referring to in this video, especially for minors. There are UGMA/UTMA accounts, depending on what state you live in. And that just simply means uniform gift to minor accounts. These accounts could be set up with basically any investment firm. Um, they allow you to invest in stocks, mutual funds, etc. We'll go over that in a little bit. And they're pretty easy to set up. The main thing you really need is the social security number of the said child. And that's it. You can go ahead and start the account, and you will be the controller of the account until the child is of age of majority in their state. In some cases, that is 18. In some cases, that is 19. In some states, it is 21. In some states, it's 25. So just depending on their college, things like that. So it just depends on where you are. Definitely know what the rules are for your area and understand the pros and cons. I would say, in my experience with UGMA, UTMA accounts, the biggest thing that people misunderstood um, in starting a UGMA account or UGMA account. Hey, Karen, thanks for joining here tonight. And starting a UGMA account or UTMA account is once the child is no longer a minor and they make claims to those funds, there is nothing you can do about it. You have no control. So, in the case of, let's say you have a kid that, I say, got caught up in the wrong crowd, or you didn't agree with their decisions, things like that we typically have to go through in parenting. If that young, let's say young adult, um, comes across the fact that you have set aside money for them in this type of account, and they find out how to get a hold of it, all they need to do is show their ID, and the assets are turned over to them, and you have no say so over that. They're legally, you have no say so over that. I've had quite a few instances in the past where um, some parents had set some money aside for their children. Their children got into a situation that they didn't agree in, and it did not turn out well. Um, and it's not something that you don't want to be prepared for. I think that one way of hedging that off is, again, early on, getting them to understand the importance and the benefits when it comes to having that account and why you set that money aside for them. So definitely, it just goes back again to making them understand the process, the whys, the importance. Show them examples of people that they follow, especially people who make a lot of money, which most kids do. Follow them. Show them examples of why this person or that person is successful when it comes to their money, and why you are following them, listening to them. And it'll hit home. Again, it's all about planting seeds. The other option is an IRA. It's a Roth or a traditional IRA. And we've talked about this a little bit in some of my groups. Now, the only thing about traditional Roth IRAs for a minor is that, obviously, just like the UGMA, UTMA accounts, there has to be custodian on it. But also, the minor has to have some form of income, not an allowance, not just some regular cut the grass money that they put in their pocket, but some form of income that can be shown, tracked through in a checking account, something like that. You definitely speak to your tax advisor to make sure that whatever your child is doing, bringing in money from, that is something that's verifiable in case there's an audit situation. The benefits of traditional Roth is they last, obviously, like yours do, to retirement and beyond. So they can have beneficiaries on the account. As we know, I'm very heavy when it comes to keeping beneficiaries updated. And then the benefit, and one other thing you want to know, when it comes to minors or young adults having IRAs, typically it's recommended that you focus primarily on a Roth IRA, especially as a minor. Reason being is the Roth IRA allows them to pull out money at any time for pretty much any reason, as long as they're not pulling out earnings. So Roth IRA, if they ended up putting in having a good year tutoring or doing something like that and making $1,000 that year, that $1,000 grows to $4,000 by the time they turn 17, and they want to um, spend that money on something that's not necessarily education related, or that may help pay for some trips before they go off to college, or maybe they don't want to go to college, maybe they're paying for some certification or something they want to do with the hobby, whatever the case may be. That money is their money to take out, as long as they're not taking out the earnings. That if they put in $1,000 and they're less than the age of 59 and a half, then they can pull out the $1,000 they put in and still not have to worry about any issues. So those are really good when it comes to setting money aside for flexible options for your kid, and definitely something to look into if your kid has reportable income. You want to make sure that you're aware of that. So I've definitely pressed on that. Speak to your tax advisor. Hey Wayne, thanks for joining. How do I make some money? We'll get to that. That might be another video. There's several ways to make money, but we'll get to that in another video. Another common way to set aside money for your kids and investing is a trust account. Trust account is sometimes used over a UGMA, UTMA account, simply because you have full control and the kids cannot touch that trust account until you say they can. So unlike the UGMA, UTMA account, when it comes to taking money out of the account once they're of age, unless you set, if you wanted to have the, for example, using the example that I used a minute ago, if you want to have more control or stipulations as to what that money is used for when they turn of age, that's where a trust account comes in. A trust account is, you can set up an investment account. They may or may not have access to it along the way, but anything that they want to pull out of that account in the meantime has to be approved by the trustee of the account, the grantor of the account, whoever's in charge of that money. And no matter what age that child's, you'll notice that a lot of very, very wealthy people have trust accounts set aside for that very reason, to make sure that the money is protected. Of course, again, you want to make sure that they are, I suggest make sure they are part of the process to kind of ward off some possible issues in the future, so they know the reason why. And it usually turns out better when, again, they're a part of the process. The trust account's a lot harder to set up. Takes a lot of documents. Usually, there are some cases you can set up one on your own using some online websites, but usually the best way to set up a trust account is with a legal representative, an attorney, simply because you want to make sure you cover everything, especially if you think there may be a chance where getting a hold of those funds may be an issue, I'll say. All right. Hey, Rick, how about a 401k and pull things out? I will get to that in just a moment. That's a good question. Thanks for the question, Rick. I will get to that in just a moment. The last thing in the account types is transfer on death. I mentioned this a little bit the week before last. Transfer on death accounts. That's basically where it's an account that you set up. Obviously, it's your account where your child is the beneficiary, so they don't have access to it until they are you're no longer with them. So technically, it's not their account. You can give them access to it. That is completely up to you. But they don't have access to pulling out the funds until you are gone. So in other words, just like an IRA account, where they're the beneficiary, the assets turned over to them. Same thing with a transfer on death on any type of brokerage account. When something happens to you, it transfers directly to them, and they don't have to worry about doing really anything else other than providing a death certificate and their ID and have an account set up in their name. All right. And that brings me to number 4. Let's see how much time we got for here. 10 minutes. Number 4, teach them about investment types. Mentioned just a little bit about this earlier. Investment types, pretty much early on, I would say the main things you want to cover with them are stocks, mutual funds, and ETFs. ETF is an exchange traded fund. It's basically, um, for lack of a better word, it's like a mutual fund that trades on the stock market daily throughout the day. Both mutual funds and ETFs, exchange traded funds, are um, investment products that invest in a group of assets. So in other words, the S&P 500, for example, is a very popular ETF, the Spider, very popular ETF. And what that does is it invests solely in the S&P 500. Now, your child's first job, first retirement account on their job will be a 401k, obviously, and they typically invest in mutual funds. So they definitely want to have the understanding of what a fund is and why they exist, and know that they don't necessarily buy stocks directly in a mutual fund. It is done for them. That was probably the most common question that I had in my last job, which was in a 401k, I thought I was buying Apple. I thought I was buying, I don't know, um, Microsoft or whatever the case may be, or Google, when they didn't still understand that you were, but just not directly. You're buying the fund that purchases millions and millions of dollars of the stocks that you're probably interested in within their fund. But each fund has different amounts, different percentages that are invested in that specific stock. And that kind of brings me back to your question, Rick, which was about taking money out of a 401k. There is not necessarily a time where you can take money out of a 401k without having to worry about the taxes, with the exception of some company plans have what's called after tax contributions. You typically don't use after tax contributions unless you have maxed out your limit of the amount that you are to put in each year. So, in any time, in any case, if you're pulling out earnings from a 401k and you are under the retirement age, the required retirement age, you're going to have to worry about taxes. So, just keep that in mind. Same thing if it's a regular contribution, it's pre tax dollars, you hadn't paid taxes on it, you're getting taxed and penalized if you're under retirement age. If it's a Roth contribution type, then of course, same thing applies. You can take out what you put in. So if you put in 5,000, it's 10 years later that 5,000 worth 7. You should be able, as long as the company rules, the plan rules allow for it, you should be able to pull out the Roth dollars without penalty that you initially put in. So that 5, yes. The additional 2, which is earnings, no. So good. I'm glad I answered that question. So let me know if you have any other questions. But that's a good question, especially for those of you who have young adults who are starting 401k, simply because a lot of them do not realize the difference. And most people think that the best way to start contributing is in a regular traditional traditional contribution, the pre-tax contribution. When as a child, as a young adult, it's in a lot of cases it may be more beneficial for them to do Roth contributions. Um, Most companies have both now, so it's good to look into, simply because they don't have a lot of taxable income. So have that money grow tax free, what they put in and what they um, what they make on those dollars will be better for them in the long run. So definitely do your due diligence and looking into what's best for you. There's a lot of information again online, and always, as I say, always, always, always check with your tax advisor who knows your tax picture and who will be familiar with your family situation to help get you better set up for what's best in the long run. All right. Another thing, going back under investment types that I wanted to mention, another common thing that people are set up in when it comes to investing. Some of you guys have 529 plans for your children. Some of you guys have just set up accounts with Vanguard, Fidelity, um, several other institutions that have what's called target date funds. A target date fund, if you don't want to get into a stock or choosing stock or anything like that, but you want to make sure that you're in the appropriate amount of investments for your kid, a target date fund is perfect as long as the target date year of that investment is set for whatever goal. So if it's a college type plan, you typically have, you know, college plan target date 2025, which is that's the year that your kid will be going to college. So that's when it kind of is invested to start the investments internally, or invested to progressively get more conservative as you get closer to that date, so that you're able to take that money out without the same amount of risk that you started maybe 10 or 15 years ago. So there's benefits in target date funds. Don't count them out. Um, don't hesitate to go over that with your kid when they're setting up their first 401k. It's very important that they understand what that is. Even if they are invested in something else, it's always good to get them started early in those types of plans. Same thing, a regular IRA that you set up for your kid, or a regular long-term investment you set up for your kid. There's nothing wrong with teaching them to choose certain stocks based on their own preference, and or hopefully you taught them, if you haven't learned for yourself already, taught them how to research investments, stock investments, and allow them to have a little bit of money in specific stocks, especially where now you can buy partial shares. And then the other side of the account would be in mutual funds. So they're getting exposure to an array of different investments like you are in your retirement accounts. It's very, very important. All right, make sure I have no other questions. Nope. And we have just 3 more minutes. So the last thing, most important, is just get started. Not going to go into this one as long, but just get started. The main thing is having the conversations first, having them get familiar with, finances. I think the main thing that we as adults do wrong, that we're learning more and more now, is not having them be a part of a process. They don't have to how much you make. They don't have to how much money um, you're spending on your bills and things like that. But it is important for them to see and value money differently than what we probably were taught in the generations before us. So because most of that was kept private. But nowadays, with everything being online, with everything being just about anywhere you see, and, kids, like I said, I've said 10 times over, they are watching, they are paying attention. The, this is the first time I've had conversations really in depth with young adults to the level that I have. People's kids have come up to me and said things. My own family have come up and said things, and they're listening. They're paying attention. They're, especially when it comes to, like I said before, cryptocurrency. It's in their video games. It's in. I wish I remember the name of the game that is really popular right now, but it's in just about everything you see right now. So pay attention to what's being fed to them, so you can take control of it and use it as a lesson. That is the most important thing. Um, that is really the only thing you can do. Control what you can control. And as long as you get out in front of things that um, you would want to get out in front of, just like we do with other issues, you want to make sure you get that financial conversation out of the way too. So, with that being said, it is now 8:30, and as always, I try to keep you here for just a short amount of time. Again, I want to thank everyone for being here. I want to remind you to definitely make it a point to sign up at buildourlegacy.com so you can get contact information about classes when they're ready to go, and how to sign up, and any questions if you want to sign up for a consultation, anything like that. I'd be more than happy to speak to you. And don't hesitate to join me back here next Wednesday at 8 p.m. where we'll go over some more of my tips to financial freedom. So I thank you again. You guys have a great evening. It's always great to spend some time with you. And I hope you have a great week. Have a good night.